What's going on, everybody? C4 here today, quickly giving you a recap of all the first round picks and throwing out some grades here. This is like the 10th time I've tried to record this because I want it to be as short as possible so I don't hold up too much of your time. Before we jump into the picks, let me know in this comment section below how you guys want me to format tonight's videos. I've heard some suggestions. Maybe I do the second round how I did the first round, where I do each individual pick videos, and then when we get to the third round I do longer recap. Let me know though how you guys want me to format tonight's videos, and I will go with the most popular one. Now, without further ado, we're going to have a quick take on every single pick, throwing up my own personal grades. Agree or disagree, let me know. Pick number 1, the Cleveland Browns took Myles Garrett out of the defensive end out of Texas A&M. I'm giving that an A+. He was the #1 player on the board. So many people were worried that the Cleveland Browns were going to Cleveland Brown this pick up, but they did not. They got the best player, a guy that's got a superstar player, give their defense a sense of identity. Couldn't go wrong here. Good job, Browns. Pick number 2, the Chicago Bears traded up one spot to swap with the 49ers, gave up a couple decent mid-round picks to select Mitchell Trubisky, the quarterback from North Carolina. I'm giving this a C-. It doesn't make a lot of sense with the fact that it seems like they were going to give Mike Glennon the opportunity to prove himself, to see if he could be a franchise quarterback, and now you just gave yourself a quarterback controversy to deal with. I think some Bears fans may be giving this a lower grade, like an F, but I think Mitchell Trubisky was regarded on a lot of people's boards as the #1 quarterback. And if you think that the #1 quarterback is worth the #2 pick, if you think he's going to be your franchise guy, take it from me and Philly. We traded up to get the #2 pick to get our #1 quarterback. I understand the logic, but I don't think Trubisky is going to pan out for them, especially what they gave up and what they have on the roster right now. So I can't go much higher than a C-. Pick number 3, the San Francisco 49ers took Solomon Thomas, the defensive end from Stanford. I'm giving that one an A. I think he really fits what they're doing in the transitioning from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Now you're going to assume their line's going to be Aaron Lynch, Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, and now Solomon Thomas. That is a very good defensive front that John Lynch has working there, and very reminiscent of the great defensive lines that they had during the Jim Harbaugh era. So great pick there, as well as trading back one pick to get a bunch more mid-rounders and more ammunition. Very good job. Number 4, the Jacksonville Jaguars took Leonard Fournette. I'm giving that an A. Clearly, he's not as much of a scheme fit as Christian McCaffrey would be, but this pick here says maybe they want to change how they run things on the offensive side of the ball. They really want to be a team that can power run and not have to rely on Blake Bortles to carry them and throw it 30-plus times a game. So I really like that pick. A superstar in the making. As long as he can stay healthy, that's going to be a great pick and a fantasy stud for all you fantasy football players out there by Leonard Fournette going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Next up at pick number 5 is the Tennessee Titans, who selected Corey Davis, wide receiver out of Western Michigan. I'm giving this a B+. This was the first pick where I'm going, oh shit, this is where wide receivers are going? God damn. But getting Corey Davis, I made a mock draft. I think it was my 4th mock draft. I did 5 in total, my 4th one. I had the Titans taking Corey Davis, and I got heat for that. But I think if Corey Davis is the guy that you think will be the franchise wide receiver to pair with your franchise quarterback and Marcus Mariota, if you think that is what your team needs, a playmaker on the outside to win that AFC South, you don't wait till 18 because he'll be gone. You select him at number 5, and that's clearly what they did. So I'm giving this a B+ with a lot of upside for maybe the future Terrell Owens. Pick number 6, the Jets took Jamal Adams, the safety of LSU. This is an A+. This is an A+ every single day. It reminds me a lot of when Leonard Williams fell a couple years ago, the defensive tackle out of USC. People were just like, oh, he just fell into the Jets' lap. I think the exact same thing here happened with Jamal Adams, where the Jets had so many holes, they had to take best player available, and they may have got one of the safest players in the draft, and a guy that's going to bring an identity and leadership to that secondary and really replace what they're losing from that standpoint, the intangible standpoint, from Darrelle Revis, who's no longer there in New York. So an excellent pick here. Picks number 7, the LA Chargers took Mike Williams, the wide receiver from Clemson. I'm giving this a C as it stands right now. I think it's kind of overkill at a position. They could have went with the defensive back. Malik Hooker, who we had mocked there forever. Offensive lineman, trading back. Maybe Philly would have been smart. They would have traded up here to try to get Marshawn Lattimore. But now they got Mike Williams, a wide receiver. I'm not exactly sure what his role is going to be with the Chargers. Looking at them right now, they have Keenan Allen, who when healthy, maybe there's more to his injuries that meets the eye. That's what I'm kind of thinking. But Keenan Allen, when healthy, he's a wide receiver 1. You got Tyrell Williams, who really emerged as a serviceable wide receiver 2 with some upside. He's young. You got Travis Benjamin, who you paid decent money in free agency. He's your wide receiver 3. You got Gates and Hunter Henry at tight end. So where does really Mike Williams come in? It kind of seems like overkill a little bit, but if he was the players that the Chargers identified as the guy that will help Phillip Rivers the most, more so than an offensive lineman by trading back, it's a pick you got to go. But I'm just giving it a C right now, as it seems kind of overkill at the wide receiver spot. The Carolina Panthers selected Christian McCaffrey, the running back out of Stanford, with pick number 8. I'm giving that a B+. Again, Leonard Fournette would be a more scheme fit, fits how the Panthers like to play, where like to grind the clock, like they control the ball on the offensive side. But now Christian McCaffrey adds an explosive, dynamic weapon out of that backfield alongside Cam Newton, which is exactly what they need. A shot in the arm for that offense, and I'm giving that a B+. Pick number 9, the Cincinnati Bengals selected John Ross, the wide receiver from Washington. I'm giving that a C+. People think that's a little bit of reach. I personally believe this was a panic move when they saw that Mike Williams and Corey Davis is already gone. Wide receiver is definitely a position they could address, but they got John Ross, who has durability concerns. That's my only issue right now. The fact that he's a little bit undersized, and undersized wide receivers from college, you kind of like, that's the natural inclination, is that they're going to be injury prone. And the fact that after he ran his 4.22 blazing 40, he hurt himself. So like, those are red flags all over the board. But clearly, you know, Brandon LaFell and Tyler Boyd weren't getting it done, trying to replace Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu. I think now you got upside with Boyd, who can be your slot wide receiver. You got A.J. Green, who's an every down outside guy. Now you have John Ross that's going to be able to spread the field. I like the pick. I'm going to say it's a C+ with upside if you could stay on the field for the Cincinnati Bengals. At pick number 10, we have the Kansas City Chiefs trading up with the Buffalo Bills, which eventually involved 2 first-rounders to select Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback from Texas Tech, going to learn, sit behind Alex Smith this season, and I assume going to be their starter in 2018. I'm giving this a C. I just don't agree with the valuation. I think Patrick Mahomes is a solid prospect. I think he's going to a great situation in Kansas City where he's not going to be really rushed to start. But I just don't agree with the 2 first-round picks to trade up to get a project quarterback. That's where I'm seeing it. I think Mahomes is a good prospect. Obviously, when Big Red likes a quarterback, he liked Donovan McNabb. Things worked out decent for us in Philadelphia. But like I said, I just can't get on the evaluation to trade up and get Mahomes. So that's why I'm sticking with a C. At number 11, the New Orleans Saints selected Marshawn Lattimore, the wide receiver, the corner from Ohio State. I'm giving that an A+. You debatably got the top corner in this year's draft class at pick 11, where the Saints had to go best defensive player available, and they got a guy that I think is probably a fringe top 5 talent, especially with how much destruction has gone on with the cornerback board, be it Sidney Jones injury, Garyon Conley, and all that stuff. Tremendous pick here from the Saints. A+ for your clear cut, I think, corner 1 on that defense for the upcoming season. Excellent pick there for the Saints. Pick 12, the Texans had to trade up to select Deshaun Watson, the quarterback out of Clemson. I'm giving that a C+. Again, it's a panic move. Very much that kind of how I feel the Bengals when they took Ross. I think clearly the Texans said, like, oh, fuck, all our quarterbacks are gone. We're going to have to make a move right now. We're going to have to trade up with the Cleveland Browns, give them our first-round pick next year. Again, just really, really weird evaluation. If you think these are the guys, there's still quarterbacks next year, fellas. Tom Savage would have been fine this year, and then you could have got, you know, your pick of the bunch maybe if you guys weren't intending to compete. But yeah, I like Deshaun Watson. He's my favorite quarterback out of this year's draft class. I'm pulling for him. I like the fit in Houston. Clearly, Bill O'Brien, he's a QB whisperer. I assume Deshaun Watson's probably going to be open competition to start this season. But again, tough evaluation. I'll give it a C+. I like it slightly more than Mahomes, but I don't know, man. These quarterbacks, I'm not expecting a quick return for any of these quarterbacks, and a lot of these teams gave up big bucks to get them. Pick 13, the Arizona Cardinals took Hassan Riddick, the linebacker from Temple. I'm giving that a B-. Nice scheme fit. I think a little bit high from Riddick, who really helped his stock with just testing out the goddamn park during the combine. I'm a big fan of Riddick, but I look at the Cardinals wide receiver. They're already gone, so you had to look at defensive back or linebacker. I like the fit, but I think maybe a defensive back could have been a little bit more beneficial for them. Or maybe a defensive line. You know, friggin', what do you call with Steeler? Jonathan Allen. Just plug and place Jonathan Allen. He would take over for what you lost in Calais Campbell. I just think maybe linebacker wasn't the best fit, but I really do like the prospect, so that's why we give it a B-. Actually, change that. We'll make that a B. We'll make that a solid B grade. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles at 14 took Derek Barnett, the defensive end from Tennessee. You already know my thoughts on this. I'm not going to give it a crazy downgrade like some people may expect. I'm giving this a C+. I don't hate the Derek Barnett prospect, even though I do think there's a Derek Barnett in every draft, 1 or 2 of them every year in first round. It's a nice fit for our scheme. I just cannot get behind getting defensive end being the number 1 pick at 14. Trade down. Just trade fucking down. If you weren't going to trade up to get Marshawn Lattimore when he slipped, just trade down and acquire more picks. There's more holes on this team to fill than what we have with current draft picks. So trade down, acquire more ammunition, and not have a defensive end that's just going to throw into the rotation right now. So that's a C+. Number 15, the Indianapolis Colts selected Malik Hooker, the safety from Ohio State. I'm giving that an A-. It's a good scheme fit, best player available. Probably wasn't expecting them to be on their board. He's going to come in and be a starting free safety for them day 1. Maybe, a lot of people draw the comparisons to an Ed Reed. That's not a bad pick. That's not a bad comparison to have. So I think it was a solid pick, best player available there for the Colts. Pick 16, the Baltimore Ravens took Marlon Humphrey, the corner from Alabama. I'm giving this a C+. I think a little bit of a reach. I thought Marlon Humphrey should have been between pick 25 and probably early, mid second round. I think it's a little bit of a reach, but I've learned Baltimore Ravens, you really can't go wrong and criticize their evaluators. They usually hit home runs in the draft. Maybe they saw something we didn't. I mean, Marlon Humphrey, willing tackler, great athlete. I just think he's a little bit more of a project than some teams really think. Maybe Baltimore knows what they're getting into there. They want to bank on the upside, which could very well be the case. But as it stands right now, I'm giving Marlon Humphrey a C+. Washington at pick 17 took Jonathan Allen, defensive end from Alabama. That's an A- right there, falling. Maybe because I'm only giving it an A- because maybe there's the injury concern. I don't see him slipping to 17 unless there are some big red flags for his injury. But, as it stands, if he turns out to be fine, that is a steal. That might be the steal of the draft alongside, I think, maybe with Marshawn Lattimore at 11 to the Saints. Great pick there for the Washington Redskins. I mean, even me as an Eagle fan, I probably would have rather Jonathan Allen and Derek Barnett, but the injury is there. But, who knows? Who knows if the Redskins that shuffle the front office, maybe they didn't have as much paper and much information on Allen's injury. I don't know. I'm going to say that's probably not the case. But as it stands right now, it's a great pick for the Washington Redskins. I'm giving that an A-. At pick 18, the Tennessee Titans took Adoree Jackson, the corner from USC. I'm giving that a C+. He's a dynamic playmaker. They really need to get someone at the defensive back. I just think maybe a guy like Garyon Conley, depending on where he was on their board, Trey White, might have been a little bit better pick, but I think with Adoree Jackson, you get a better floor, because I think if he struggles to be a starting outside corner, you're always going to get the special team playmaking ability in the return game from an Adoree Jackson. So he kind of offers two phases to your team, a two-headed weapon. But yeah, they had to go the right position. I don't necessarily know if Adoree Jackson was the right prospect, but his production last year at USC was outstanding, and it's a solid pick there for the Titans. That's why they're getting a C+. Number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took O.J. Howard. That's an A+ all day long. That offense needs to continue to add just big-time weapons. Even though they had Cameron Brate, who was a serviceable tight end last year, you get a guy that was a fringe top 10 talent for sure in O.J. Howard, and you just got Jameis Winston alongside with Mike Evans, alongside with Deshaun Jackson. If Doug Martin can pull it together, that is going to be an explosive offense that needs to be explosive to stay up with the likes of the Atlanta Falcons within their own division. I really, really like this pick, and I don't throw A+'s out willy-nilly, but they're getting an A+ here for this O.J. Howard pick at 19. At pick number 20, the Denver Broncos selected Garrett Bowles, the offensive tackle from Utah. I'm giving that pick there a B-. I personally think Cam Robinson and Ryan Ramczyk would have been better fits. I had them as I personally graded them a little bit higher, but it's the right position, and if they thought Bowles was the guy, at least they're addressing the right spot. I think he probably will come in, play right tackle for them. I'm not exactly sure when he's going to fit in. He's going to be an instant starter at right tackle. They got Menelik Watson, who came over from the Oakland Raiders. Who knows? But I like the pick. Addressing the offensive line, that's a B-. 21, the Detroit Lions took Jared Davis, a linebacker from Florida. I'm giving that an A- with my Florida Gator bias. Literally, if he didn't have any injury concerns, this would be an A+ pick. I think, especially with the Reuben Foster injury concerns, I mean, it kind of sucks that the top two linebackers, I think, both have those injury concerns. And Jared Davis, unfortunately, does miss some time with the Gators. If he can stay healthy over the Detroit Lions, linebacker was the biggest need for them to go out and draft. And I really do like the pick here of Jared Davis. He's a leader. He's going to bring a type of mentality they don't really have right now in the Detroit Lions defense. Good pick if he can stay healthy. Pick number 22, the Miami Dolphins took Charles Harris, the defensive end from Missouri. I'm giving that a B-. I think it was a better pick. I'm kind of comparing it to Philadelphia. They have a little bit older defensive ends in Cam Wake and William Hayes. I think a guy like Charles Harris, great mentality, will fit in very nicely, I think, with Ndamukong Suh on that defensive front. But I think maybe Miami wanted an outside linebacker, maybe getting a guard could have been a better pick here for them. But I don't think you can complain. I think some fans maybe want a TJ Watt or a Forrest Lamp. But I think Charles Harris is a very solid prospect that he's going to fit well there on the Miami Dolphins defense for an aging defensive end core. Pick 23, the New York Giants took Evan Ingram, the tight end from Ole Miss, giving that a B+. I think Evan Ingram, a little bit of a reach maybe. I personally thought Evan Ingram was a second-round talent just because he's a one-dimensional tight end. But if you think he can come in and be a Jordan Reed, maybe the Giants were getting tired of the Washington Redskins and Jordan Reed burning them. He's a great fit. If they determined him to be, that's how the Giants should have addressed this pick. Is what's the one player that's going to help Eli Manning? Is it going to be an offensive lineman replacing that piece of trash, Eric Armstead, or is it going to be adding a playmaking tight end in Evan Ingram? Clearly, that's what they did. I like Evan Ingram, been a big fan of him since Ole Miss. I thought he was even better as a pure receiver than Laquan Treadwell was last year coming out of Ole Miss. So overall, this is a B+ pick with upside. Number 24, the Oakland Raiders took Garyon Conley, the corner from Ohio State. Clearly, they got behind with the lie detector test or whatever, and maybe they spoke with his lawyer, and they had clear conscience to make this pick. This is an A all day long. I couldn't give it an A+ just because there is uncertainty. Maybe this case goes wrong, takes a nosedive. They're kind of burnt, but at face value, they got the second best corner in the first round at pick 24. Classic Raiders, a team that wants to win now, making a great evaluation there. At pick 25, the Cleveland Browns, another pick for the Browns. They took Jabril Peppers, the safety defensive weapon from Michigan. I'm giving this a C+. I think trading down to get this pick. Maybe they could have got a better guy at 12, more blue chip prospect, as people are saying. But Jabril Peppers does offer some superstar ceiling ability on the defensive side of the ball and could come in and be their top safety day one. They have fairly weak safeties there in Cleveland. I personally am not really behind his coverage ability right now. I think he's still a project player, but I think Greg Williams will find a way to use him. But I just find like getting Peppers at 25 or staying at 12, they could have got a better prospect there at 12. That's why I'm only giving this a C+. Pick 26, Atlanta Falcons took Takk McKinley, the outside linebacker, edge rusher from UCLA. Giving that a B+. Another guy that kind of slipped, could have very well went 10 picks higher. I think it's a good pick here for the Atlanta Falcons, who I'm pretty sure they traded up to get this pick and select Takk McKinley. They needed some edge rush help. They needed a guy to put on the opposed side of a Vic Beasley, and Takk McKinley's going to do that as a high upside. I think Dan Quinn's going to find a way to get him and utilize him as a rookie day one. So that's why this gets a B+. Number 27, the Buffalo Bills took Tre'Davious White, the corner out of LSU. Give us a B+. I think Trey White, that's good value. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be an immediate impact playmaker, but at 27, that's about the range that Trey White should have got selected, and the Bills are trying to find a way to replace what they lost in Stephon Gilmore back there in the secondary and find a partner for Ronald Darby, and that very well could be a Trey White. So good value, not a reach, about where he should have got picked, so that's why it's a B+. Number 28, the Dallas Cowboys took Taco Charlton, the defensive end edge rusher from Michigan. I'm giving that a B. I personally think if I'm a Cowboys fan, edge rush was a need, but I think more so the secondary is where you want to improve. That's the only reason why this grade can't go a little bit higher. But Taco Charlton, I mean, there are some concerns about his motor and his work rate, but if he can get it all together there, and DC down there in Dallas does get the most of his players, this could be a very high upside pick for a team that struggle to find pressure because Randy Gregory's like the dumbest player in the NFL. So I'm giving this a solid B there for the Cowgirls. Ew. Pick 29, the Cleveland Browns with another pick. They selected David Njoku, the tight end from Miami. I'm giving this a B- because I think this is kind of a, you had Gary Barnidge, who's serviceable at the tight end spot. I think tight end, if you said you're talking about Cleveland Browns, they kind of need a bit of everything, but I don't think you'd find too many fans, unless maybe O.J. Howard was still there, that could see them selecting a tight end here in the first round as their biggest glaring need. Maybe if they end up missing two, especially on a Davis Webb, a quarterback prospect that I'm high on, maybe he would have been a little bit better fit here at number 29 if they end up missing on him. It's going to be this kind of pick evaluation will go off based who they take in the second and third rounds, where they still have a bunch of fucking picks. But as it stands right now, I'm giving Njoku a B-. Certainly has a high upside to be a starting tight end. Draw a lot of comparisons to a Greg Olsen. But again, I don't know. A B- is still not a bad grade. Pick number 30, the Pittsburgh Steelers selected T.J. Watt, the outside linebacker from Wisconsin. I'm giving that a B+. I didn't think T.J. Watt was still going to be available here at 30. A lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans aren't super excited with this pick. They're not T. Martin super excited, but I think this is a good fit. He's going to come in and learn and play behind and rotate in with James Harrison, and I assume James Harrison, this is going to be his last year. So next year, you have your immediate cover. You have your partner with Bud Dupree on the defensive line, or defensive front. And I think T.J. Watt was a great pick here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's why he's getting a B+. Pick 31, the San Francisco 49ers took Reuben Foster, the linebacker from Alabama. Clearly slipped, clearly the medical and some off-field had him slipping down this far. But I'm giving this an A-. I'm only giving him an A- because clearly the medical is a lot more serious than teams consider, or else this guy that drawed comparisons from Luke Kuechly wouldn't have slipped all the way down to 31. But I like the initiative for San Francisco to trade up to get this guy. Like I said, they're transitioning from a 4-3 to a 3-4. They must envision him as an outside linebacker. There's now a gap really at the outside linebacker spot because you're pulling an Aaron Lynch who played linebacker, now moving up to the line. So there's some holes around Navarro Bowman that they needed to fill. And I don't know what they're doing with Gerald Hodges. If he's still coming back in their plans, I think they should bring him back. But I think Reuben Foster is a tremendous value pick here at 31, even if there are some injury concerns and he can't play right away. If he does get back healthy, they just got the top linebacker in the draft at pick 31, but it still remains to be seen. That's why I didn't give this a glaring A+. And finishing up in the first round of pick 32, the New Orleans Saints took Ryan Ramczyk, the offensive tackle from Wisconsin. I assume he's going to come in and compete with Zach Street for the starting right tackle spot. And I'm giving this a B. I think the Saints really should have went defense with both these picks. But if you really believe that the right tackle spot's kind of a liability, you do need to protect Drew Brees. And this is going to be your one last hurrah. You have to kind of think with Drew Brees. You got to keep him upright. And maybe you think tackle's the spot that really needs to get improved upon. Obviously, Terran Armstead's he's a lock at left tackle, but if you really need to work on right tackle, Ryan Ramczyk slipping a little bit in a draft class that's notably weak at the offensive line spot. It's not a terrible pick. I just think maybe going on the defensive side of the ball, like an edge rusher or a linebacker, would have been a better fit here. But again, when you get fucking Marshawn Lattimore at pick number 11, you're laughing. So now you got debatably the top tackle and the top wide receiver, or top tackle and the top corner, which are two of the toughest positions to draft in the NFL in the first round. Really, really solid on this pick. So overall, guys, there's all my draft grades for the first round. Let me know what you think about it. If you agree or disagree in the comment section below. As always, you know, stay tuned tonight. Second round, third round. We're going to have lots of fun here on Beast Mode TV. But thank you all for watching. If this is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, which is tonight, it's C4 saying peace out.